Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that this is the best watch in the world or something ridiculous like that, because we all know that it takes a lot more than the MSRP of a watch to determine its significance. But what I cannot deny is how this watch helped shape the current age of ultra tough sports watches that we're living in. But Richard Mille isn't the only one that made a noteworthy impact. If you're looking for your next watch, check out Swiss Connection Watches for new or pre-owned watches with new arrivals every week. Thanks. This is the first time I've handled a Richard Mille, and to be honest, I wasn't impressed. It's light and extremely robust, nothing I haven't seen before in watches like IWC's Big Pilot Shock Absorber XPL or Ulysse Nardin's Diver Air or even my Norqain Wild One. The concept of the ultra-light, ultra-robust sports watch with a suspended shock-absorbing movement isn't exactly new, but that's because Richard Mille essentially created that concept in 1999. And I had to remind myself of that because we tend to take these things for granted nowadays. But what's surprising is that almost 2 decades after the first Richard Mille was released, we primarily only saw sports-style watches, where high-tech materials like titanium and carbon were used for their lightweight and aesthetic appeal more than anything else. But only in the past few years, we have started to see brands catch up to the ultra-robust sports watches that can actually withstand shocks. Love it or hate it, Richard Mille was decades ahead of the rest of the industry. That's because Mr. Mille didn't build his watches like watches. He built them like hypercars, with the form factor, materials, and the movement architecture determined by structural necessity above anything else. Everything, down to the very last screw, was custom made, with specialized tools developed just to make those screws. There is a lot of noise surrounding this brand, which inevitably leads to a sour taste, giving a perception that this watch is simply a flex without substance. But ignoring that noise and just focusing on the bold, innovative approach that Richard Mille took to create these absolutely insane watches, that's where we can learn a lot. Although the brand talks about their meticulous hand finishing on several components, including the case and bridges, the complexity of building a mechanical watch to do exactly what a watch isn't supposed to do, experience regular, brutal shocks endlessly, is what impresses me the most about it. With some models taking up to 400 hours of component development alone, while others taking up to 6,000 hours of testing and development, these watches have had a major influence on modern sports watch development standards. And that's no small feat in an industry that's over 5 centuries old. I know, you were probably expecting something more sexy, but hear me out. Like every watch brand, yes, every watch brand, Zenith has its fair share of problems, but it also has a lot of good going for it. Not only is the case and movement finishing as good as it gets, especially to comparable watches from competitors, it also has both the tech and heritage to go along with it. And I'm not talking about the fact that Zenith supplied chronograph movements to Rolex from 1988 till the year 2000, but the fact that their automatic chronographs were so good, even back in the 80s, that until Rolex developed their own chronographs, they turned to Zenith. And they weren't the only one, with Zenith having a history of supplying their El Primero calibers to a handful of Swiss watch brands. But how did this even happen? One of the last major milestones that the watch world was chasing was a chronograph movement with automatic winding. And this was achieved by Zenith in 1969, just as fate would have it, the Japanese would render mechanical timekeeping obsolete. So the El Primero caliber only had its moment in the 90s when these calibers were revived. In a way, it's a relatively new technology for such an old industry, and that's what makes it so fascinating. The El Primero wasn't just any high-frequency movement, it was the world's first high-frequency automatic chronograph, able to measure 1/10 of a second, in addition to being the world's first fully integrated chronograph movement, setting up a whole new world of possibilities for the rest of the industry to follow. Not everyone buys a Zenith, but like those underrated brands that only those in the know appreciate, that's usually the Zenith collector. And I really want one. Oh look, another Royal Oak copy. That's exactly what I've been seeing in the comment section of almost every new integrated bracelet sports watch release, be it from Christopher Ward or Rolex. It might be too on the nose for this list, as there's no shortage of significant watches that could be included here, but every time I see a new integrated bracelet sports watch, I'm reminded of the Royal Oak. The funny thing is, most things that watch enthusiasts complain about these days, things like the lack of an in-house movement, good value for money, hiring an outside designer, especially for the brand's position, this watch didn't just come with those problems, it wore them like a badge of honor. A watch that was intentionally made of a lesser material, but then priced higher than its precious metal counterpart. And it wasn't an instant hit, it was confusing. But it was different. It sparked the interest in luxury watches that had died down during the quartz crisis. With a professional dive watch with a rotating bezel and ISO rating, there were a few early designs including the Blancpain 50 Fathoms, the Rolex Submariner, and the Zodiac Seawolf that gave the modern dive watch its recognizable DNA. But even though Omega Constellation in 1969 was technically the first watch with an integrated bracelet design, it wasn't until the Royal Oak came out 4 years later that this trend took off. Because it's one thing when a mainstream mass luxury brand like Omega creates something, but a completely different thing when you combine the might of two giants like Audemars Piguet and Gerald Genta, at the right time, mind you, for it to become an impactful part of history. And that's exactly what happened. It's been over half a century, but there still seems to be no sign of the integrated bracelet sports watch slowing down. The style has now become as important in watchmaking as a dive watch and a dress watch. It's become a genre of its own. And we see brands that lack this particular style in their offerings often struggle to appeal to the masses. What do you think of these watches, and what other watch do you think deserves to be on this list? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Do check out Swiss Connection Watches website, link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one.